We're live. We have a quorum? Yes. Yep. Call the meeting of Ag Planning, Economic Development, et cetera, to order. Can I have a motion to accept the minutes of June 22nd?
Sure.
Moved by Matt, seconded by
I'll move it.
Jay. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. First up on the agenda is soil and water, but I don't see Karina anywhere. So we'll move on to Laura Oswald.
Okay.
I don't see Karina, she's not here.
Is that Washington County or is that Al?
That's
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. So in no particular order, a couple of comments on broadband, especially as this came up at the board meeting on Friday. So the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund, which basically replaced the CAF funding, I mentioned this at the last Ag Planning meeting, is out there and available, and there were eligible areas that were released on a map. Now, what's really interesting is that the original opportunity notice was released in April with a map. Spectrum then challenged the map, saying they wanted all of those areas that they were slated to do build out on by the end of 2021 removed from the map, and the FCC complied. So, Deb, do you have that map? Deb?
Don't kill yourself.
So this is a very basic map. I want to show you what I find really interesting. The areas that were taken off, and these would all be by census blocks. There is a fair chunk in Fort Edward and Kingsbury, and I've circled the areas that were, those are the circled areas are the ones that were removed from the initial map. So there's a fair chunk that, a little bit that was removed in Hampton. You will also see, I know from Supervisor Ferguson's comments, what remains is that block to the left where I've circled it. So there's a fair area that is eligible for RDOF funding in both Putnam and Dresden. Can you scroll down a little bit, Deb? So the other area, keep going, please. That was removed, if you look in the bottom right corner of the map, there's two big chunks in White Creek that were removed. So what I don't know is, were these particular census blocks removed specifically because of spectrum or some other reason? What remains, and that's essentially all these little blue blurbs here and there, are what are eligible. So there's still a fair bit in Salem, and there's little blurbs here and there. So if any of the communities want more precise detail, I have all the layers on the Google Earth, or we can also ask Real Property to map it a little bit more, but this gives you a sense of what is currently eligible for funding. I also want to comment, because we've had comments about not only is it difficult to work from home, but schools are clearly a big issue. There are still some funding that are part of the Smart Schools Bond Act. That was essentially intended to get technology upgrades to schools. Many of the school districts have taken advantage of that money, but there are still several districts out there that have not. So that's an area that can be looked at. The CARES Act, there was an education stabilization fund that was part of the CARES Act. Again, that could potentially be looked at to get technology to schools. And I can also tell you that in terms of being proactive with our legislators, there's discussion on the table for, there's a program called Homework Gap. There's one for low-income communities and one for distance learning. So all of those things, again, depending on what happens with the legislative process, but they are in active discussion, recognizing that getting better broadband is pretty critical for everybody. So that's it on broadband, unless anybody has any questions?
I don't see any.
Okay. Just a quick note on the assessor's LGE. We discussed last time the problem that happened with the contract basically being bounced back from the state controller's office. We have run it up the food chain, contacted everybody we possibly can at Department of State, but their program divisions are very siloed from their own fiscal division, and their program divisions can't get answers from their fiscal division. So I'm still working on it. We're still trying to get answers as to where the contract is in the process. We don't yet know if it's been passed to the controller's office. We don't know. I can't get a status, but we're still working on trying to get one. I also wanted to give you a quick update on unemployment. So the actual numbers are due to be released this afternoon at the county level, but I can tell you that statewide, the unemployment numbers went from 14.5 in May to 15.7 in June. The Glens Falls metro area went from 11.2 in May to 17 in June. Now, the county was technically 10 in May. I'm expecting it's going to come in at 16, 17 for June, but the numbers won't actually be out until this afternoon. I also find it interesting in looking at the unemployment filings. They are slightly up from last week. So I think one of the things that is happening is some people are returning to work. Some companies are still in the process of laying off. So there's a bit of back and forth of some coming back, some going out. But I was a little surprised at the numbers. It wasn't a huge jump, but there were still 219 claims last week filed. A quick update on census. We're still lagging a tad behind the county. The response rate for the state is 57.7 and the county is 56.4. Argyle, Dresden, Putnam, Salem, and Whitehall are all lagging behind. And Cassie, Cambridge is the winner. You have the highest response rate in the county right now. So we have been circulating a banner from town hall to town hall. It's currently in Argyle, and we're trying to get another banner. Interestingly enough, we had it in Fort Anne, and Fort Anne did go up a little bit last week, so hopefully it made a difference. Just a quick CEG, Center for Economic Growth. Many of you may be familiar with the organization. They are a regional economic development entity. They give direct assistance to businesses. It's a membership-driven organization. Many of our large employers in the county belong to them. They also help us with various projects from time to time. So the executive director of CEG has left, and CEG is now merging with the Albany County Chamber of Commerce. This is going to be a little bit interesting because the territory that CEG covers is different than the Albany Chamber. The two organizations are merging. I haven't yet spoken to the Adirondack Chamber, but I've spoken to the president of the Albany Chamber. My hope is that given the slight footprint difference, that they'll continue to work with us and the Adirondack Chamber and help regional businesses. But they're still working out what the merged organization will look like. But they have already reached out to me and assured me that they're trying to make sure that, any assistance that was available to us before is still available to us. Okay. Tourism is the next thing on the list. So I mentioned last time that we were not sure what was going to happen with I Love New York funding. So we've gotten a little bit of additional information, and it's not what I would consider good news. So normally what happens is I Love New York deposits the year's allocation, gives it to us around March time frame. What they're doing is they have agreed to pay 50, and it's as you know, it's a 50-50 match program. They have agreed to pay 50% of our first quarter's expenses. The second quarter's expenses are a maybe, and we're not getting any commitment or lack of commitment on the second half of the year, but my guess is that it's not likely to happen. So given that, Andrew and I went through the budget for the current year. So Debbie, if you can put that up. So as you can see, what we have on the left side of this is what we think we have to keep minimally operating through the end of this year. We intend to cut off all activities except keeping the website going, which is where we're using the website for our public notifications for what's going on with businesses in the county, and also to keep social media going. That, I think both Andrew and I agreed that's pretty critical because we've made a lot of headway with social media, and if we stop that now, we're going to lose that headway. So those two things are essentially what we're looking at keeping going. As you know, we also had funding in there for Cornell Cooperative Extension and for Lakes to Locks. Brian Gilchrist and I have had a couple of conversations. We're still trying to work out what that might look like, but the original allocation to Cornell was $10,000, and what we're projecting we're going to be able to do is about $3,000 out of that, which will cover them for work that they already did in the first quarter and possibly a little bit of assistance later on in the year. Lakes to Locks, I spoke with Janet Kennedy. Her comment was basically out of the $5,000 that we budgeted for them, that they completely understand the situation. They'll take what we can give them, so we set aside $2,000 for that. I'll also comment that Janet has informed me that because of the scenic byways funding that is anticipated to be available for Lakes to Locks, but it won't be available till the year 2022. Lakes to Locks effectively intends to go dark during 2021, and they don't intend to ask us for any funding because they're aware that everybody it's going to be a hard year to fund. But they're anticipating having significant funding in 2022, so we'll talk later at the end of next year about how we might participate. So that's essentially what we're looking at, what we need. On the right side, I want to show you that the original budget consisted of $92,500 from the county and $60,000 from Isle of New York, so our total budget for the year was $152,500. As of the end of June, we had spent $65,000, leaving a remaining budget of about $87,000. So as I'm saying that what we need is $35,000 for the rest of the year. The next column over says, anticipating that I Love New York will be cut 76%. In order to meet that $35,000, we could cut the county budget, the remainder, or the entire budget actually, by 8%. Again, that's because we've already spent the first 6 months. If, however, I Love New York does fund us for the second quarter, it would be an additional $13,000 in revenue, so that $13,000 could come off the county portion and still give us the $35,000 that we need. I just wanted to show you on the third column that if that funding did come in, that's what it would look like to get to the $35,000 to put the $13,000 back to reduce the county contribution. So, I want to talk a little bit also before we go into the. Well, actually, let's do this. Do we have any questions about current operations, current budget? And Andrew, did you have any comments that you wanted to make?
No, I just want to echo the fact that keeping the website and database and social media active, especially right now. We're informing people of what's open, how does, what the new regulations are now that restaurants and bars can only serve if there's food. And then, it's the easiest and most efficient way of letting people know the current guidelines. And we've gotten a lot of engagement on it. So it'd be a shame to lose that momentum that we've built. And we've even seen an increase since March and the shutdowns and everything in the interest of people trying to find out what's open and what they can do. And then, Washington County also is at an advantage because there's so much outdoor spread out activity. So that's the real reason why we want to keep it going.
So I guess, Chris, I'm not sure. I mean, I assume we're just looking for an okay from the committee to proceed with this budget for the rest of the year?
Yeah, at this point, it would be conceptual approval. What the budget officer and I have talked about is that at this point, neither he nor I want to start making formal budget amendment reductions to the budget. I think what's better is to have a discussion with the oversight committee, agree on parameters to move forward, and then with the understanding on the part of the department head that they're not going to exceed that approval that they received from the oversight committee without coming back to you all first. So rather than having a slew of budget amendments and kind of complicating things in the formal budget, I think the agreement between the oversight committee and the department head is the more prudent course of action at this point.
I can't see my screen, so I don't know if anybody has questions. How do I make this call? Can't see the other people. Does anybody have any questions for Laura or Andrew? Okay, so is the general consensus that we're good with this budget and this is the direction we want to go?
No.
Okay. Did you say you wanted a formal resolution? We're good with that, right?
No, we're okay.
Okay. Thank you. What's next?
Okay, so if Deb, if you can put that document back.
Sorry, I couldn't see anybody.
I know, you're right. So, so the next two things that we want to talk about is the fact that the Black Dog contract, which the way that our tourism programming works, we are contracted to Black Dog, and Black Dog subcontracts everybody else. So that contract is up at the end of this year, but there is an option in the contract for a one-year renewal. So the reason that we're bringing this up now is because there's previously been discussion about, do we want to go back out to RFP, a different tourism program? If we were to do that, that's a time-consuming process. I also think that given the financial situation of the economy, it would be really hard to RFP and not have much of an idea as to, what kind of budget we're really going to have. So what we're proposing is on this scope of work for the 2021 program, these are basically the tasks that we have been undertaking to date. What we did is we rolled one or two categories up together only because previously they were kind of split out by whoever was doing the delivery, which would have been Mannix, some was doing Black Dog. So we kind of consolidated a little bit and said this is the general scope of work and activities that we want to see in the tourism program for next year, but what we're not going to know as of today is what the budget will be. That will be hammered out from the county side during the normal process, and we won't know what the I Love New York budget is until January or so is typically when it comes out. So unless the committee wants to suggest going forward and putting out an RFP, what I'm suggesting is that we look to potentially do a one-year extension of the Black Dog agreement with these tasks as a scope of work, and then finalize the budget later on. And Chris, I think we talked a little bit about how that might technically work. But basically, the idea is just to make sure that this is what we're going to do. We just don't have enough knowledge to have money to put on each line item yet.
Yeah, and to kind of clarify a little bit the reason we're bringing the discussion up today is that if we want to go out to RFP, we need to do it now. If the committee does not feel strongly that we need to go out to RFP, we have time to hopefully let the budget coalesce a little bit, understand what things are looking like. And so at this point, it would be kind of a high-level agreement of, yes, we are going to exercise our one-year extension option on the existing contract with Black Dog, with the nitty-gritties of scope of services, deliverables, and budget to be negotiated and agreed upon by both parties at a later date. Because right now we just don't have enough information to effectively try to come to an agreement on that.
And if I may make a comment, you know, how we've been looking at it, it would be just like we scaled back on the budget and the activities for the remainder of the year. We would have a kind of sliding scale of how much photography and video, how much social media is happening, and how much media purchasing, production, that kind of thing. It just is a sliding scale back and forth based on the size of the budget. And once we find out what I Love New York will be, and then fingers crossed some Airbnb money.
Sounds very reasonable at this point.
Is that a motion to, you'd like to extend the contract?
Do you need a formal motion?
Yes, please, for this one.
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Okay, moved by Matt, do I have a second?
Second.
By Dan Shaw and Jay. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Oh, I had a comment, I had a question.
Jim, do you have a question for
Yeah, I
discussion?
do have a, what's the annual renewal on that? Is there amount?
I think that's what they're saying, right, Hannah, now.
We don't know yet.
Yeah,
What
okay.
all we're saying is that we want to understand who is going to be delivering and basically what services they're going to be delivering, but we can't put a number on it until we've been through the budget process.
Understood. Cool.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried.
Okay, so for the next part of our program here, we have some very good news. We have found a way to get some money into tourism, and I'm going to turn it over to Andrew Meter to explain.
Sure. So I was successful in getting in touch with the right person at Airbnb, which was not an easy task by any means. A lot of people have been furloughed or changed, but we did manage to get to the right person. She sent us an example contract, and I'm going to pull up the wording I want to use. But basically, I've had several conversations with her. You know, I asked the question, you know, would an agreement with Airbnb be sufficient, and have other counties done this? Just pulling up the wording.
So while Andrew's pulling up the wording, I'll just mention that we did forward the sample agreement to the county attorney, who has had a chance to review it. I mean, we've got more documents, but you know, I'll obviously let Roger speak for himself, but I don't think he found any major issues with it.
No, it's fine. There's really no obligation on our behalf other than give the money. So if they're going to agree to collect it, which they don't have to do, but I think they're willing to do it because they see the march of inevitability coming. And I sent it to Al to take a look at, and I'll let Al talk for Al, but between the two of us, I don't see any major impediment to doing that. The next question is to make the approach to actually getting something that form done.
We're having a hard time hearing Roger.
I'm sorry. So I didn't have any problems with the thing. I've never been accused of being quiet. I didn't have any problems with the thing.
This is new to all of us.
I sent it down to Al, and Al can talk about Al's point of view, which is obviously different than mine. But from my standpoint, is if they don't, you know, this is a voluntary thing on their part. I think with the view in mind that it may not be voluntary at some point. So they're trying to get an agreement in place so that, from a legal standpoint, there's no, impediment to going forward with that. It doesn't really obligate us to do much of anything at this point other than to take the money that they agree to collect. And it's obviously a broader definition than what we have right now. So, from a legal standpoint, I think we're all set to go ahead.
Do you have any comments you want to add, Al?
No, I didn't see anything that was abnormal in it. I had one comment that I sent back to Roger that was a small, like, wording thing, but the mechanics of it are pretty straightforward.
So then to add on to that, we weren't sure if we were able to dictate the percentage of the collection, and we are. That agreement did not say what the percentage was, so we have to tell them that we have, our county has the authority to collect occupancy tax, and it's at 4%. The wording they use is we collect lodging taxes from travelers in jurisdictions where we are required by law or an agreement. And I love that, or an agreement, because that's what other counties have taken to mean that they can enter into these agreements. And then the only other part that I don't love, but I'm willing to deal with because of our current situation, is that there's no look back. We have reporting through a third-party reporting agency, and we can't go back to Airbnb and say, hey, this shows you had 101 room nights and an average of whatever. You only paid us X amount of dollars. They don't want that back and forth. So I don't see a problem with that, because I think any money that we can get from them would help our situation. And then I'm entering in the same discussions with VRBO and HomeAway so that we can have an agreement. The issue with that one is that we would be the first county in the state to have an agreement with them, but they're collecting in Vermont, they're collecting in Massachusetts. So it shouldn't be too hard, but it's going to take a little longer. Lastly, sorry, James, lastly, if we have an agreement to move forward, we send them the percentage and the language or the resolution that you're going to move forward with this, and then they can start on September 1st is their earliest they can start. So I'm not anticipating huge amounts of money, because obviously we're going to miss the summer, but then we're set up well for next year.
So Andrew, if I recall from the email, we have to have it signed and back to them by the end of the month in order for them to begin collections in September, right?
Yes, that was their request.
Okay.
Jim?
Are we going, what percentage are we, because you went to the percentage, that's what the question I was going to ask, Andrew.
I would say, let's stick with the same percentage as your other occupancy tax. Yep. And then as that changes, whether moving in the future, we move to a system where vacation rentals have to register, and then, there's a whole bigger scheme. Yeah. I would just stick with the same occupancy tax as exists in your law now. Okay. Which is currently 4%.
Yep. The other piece is we still got 6 weeks of prime season left. So if we don't delay, September 1st to Columbus Day is still prime season for Airbnb and VRBO rentals. So if we delay and we wait till October, we miss a full month of September, which is good revenue that we could bring in.
Yes.
Can we do this on this committee, or does it have to go through finance?
Right, my question, yeah.
I think the norm, go ahead.
The board is signing it, it has to go through the August committee meeting, which is 20-something, from what I remember. 21st, thank you. So, I was about to say 21st. So that would mean we couldn't get it to them by the end of this month, obviously. The alternative is the treasurer is the collection officer, and if he was comfortable signing it, he is an independent elected official. The money would be going through his accounts anyway, the collection officer for regular bed tax. I would defer to him as to whether or not he'd be comfortable signing that, but I think that would be a legitimate,
He,
agreement as well.
he's given a thumbs up, so he's
Yeah.
okay with it. So would we like to make that resolution out of this committee to start the agreement made by Jim Griffiths? Do I have a second? Jay?
At 4%, correct?
At 4%.
Yeah.
Any further discussion?
So we're moving the pro-tunket sort of, right?
Well, what you're doing is a motion of
No,
support
pre-tunket.
at this point for the concept of signing the agreement, or supporting that the treasurer sign an agreement.
Yep.
Or take the steps necessary to collect the revenue at this point, and, he would then sign the contract on behalf of the county. He's an officer authorized to sign the county. So we can do that, and, we can move forward before the end of the month, as soon as we got the agreement in, and with the same storm we saw, we should be all set and ready to go.
Any other further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Andrew, thank you very much. We've been years trying to get something through on this, and you've done it. Thank you. We appreciate it.
All right, excited.
Al?
Jesse, on a related topic, I don't know if this is for Laura, Andrew, or both. Due to COVID, I've had a little bit more opportunities to adventure through the county with my wife. And I'm not entirely sure that we have all of the brick and mortar ones that are in our county reporting to me. Is there a listing or someplace I can find out who our hotel and motels are in the county, so that I know that I'm collecting from everybody that I should be already?
Andrew, I'll let you answer that. Website, I assume.
No, I think he's asking, is there a list of the people that are reporting occupancy tax currently? Which,
No, I need to know who's in business in the county, because I think I've discovered at least one in my travels that is not on my list.
yeah, we can export on our, we have a business database that is now categorized by industry, so to speak. So we have a lodging list, a restaurant list, which we can definitely share with you. And
That would be helpful. I have a very nice welcome to Washington County letter I'd love to send out.
Matt Hicks?
You know, Al, if you wanted to send to each one of us who you have listed in each of our towns, then we can double check that in each of our towns and get back to you to see if we can see anybody who's been missed.
That would be helpful as well. Thank you.
Al, does on that list of B&Bs come under that or not?
They would have to have at least 4 units or more, Jay, so it depends on
Okay.
the size. There are some B&Bs in Washington County, but they have to be at least 4 units.
Okay. Next on the list?
That's all I have.
Okay, Brian, you're on here. Brian Gilchrist, you want to give us an update on what Cooperative Extension's been doing?
Sure. I'll start with ag-related topics. Our ag staff has been busy working with ag businesses, farms, ag employers on their New York Forward plans. Believe it or not, farms are supposed to have plans, safety plans in place. Not any farm, even if they don't have employees. So a family farm with no employees still should have some form of basic plan. So they've been working with producers and farmers to make sure they have those plans in place, what they should include. A couple months ago, they really started working with the farm stands and U-pick operations to make sure that they had their plans in place, that all their safety protocols were in place, trying to find creative solutions, especially for the U-pick operations where there was frequently touched surfaces. So how were people picking strawberries and going beyond just regular sanitation of those pails? So all that had to be in place before these farm stands and U-pick operations could be open to the public. Our farm business management educator has worked with some producers on PPP loans when that was open. Some producers got loans in businesses. And related to that, we partnered with, or we were asked to partner with the New York State Department of Ag and Markets to give out the New York State hand sanitizer to ag producers. Part of that was aimed at food production. Any of those people that had to have, again, plans in place and sanitizer to meet those. It was kind of broad. It was broadened out to just ag producers, but we've had 2 giveaways. Here in Washington County, we've given out over 800 gallons of the hand sanitizer. Again, this was things that they had to have in place to open their farm stands or to have on their operations. Doesn't sound like a lot, doesn't sound like a big commitment or a big thing to do, but if you recall back when this all started, hand sanitizer was very difficult to come across, and a gallon of hand sanitizer was $50 to $80. So if we gave out 800 gallons at $50, that's, you know, $40,000 that was, you know, saved our ag producers in Washington County. We still have some more of that sanitizer left, and we'll probably be doing a 3rd distribution as we get closer to apple season and vineyards doing on-farm operations. So our craft beverage industry was also included in that hand sanitizer giveaway. Currently, ag staff are monitoring the drought situation in the county and looking at that. How is it affecting crops? And they are able to, ag staff are able to go out and do farm visits. So they are doing that as people are dealing with some of the drought issues. As far as ag education and youth, 4-H has been something that's been difficult to do when we haven't been in person. We have not allowed our 4-H club leaders to start holding meetings yet. As you can imagine, it's doing in-person programs ourselves is easier to control to make sure people are following safety protocols. But putting it out to 64-H clubs and 64-H leaders, hoping that they're following the guidelines and doing everything they're supposed to, is a little bit, I don't want to say, we're trying to make sure that everyone understands what they're doing and being as safe and cautious as possible. So we have the safety plan in process for the 4-H clubs. We have a liability of waiver form that everyone has to sign. We're encouraging them not to meet in people's houses, to meet outside, no more than 25 people in a setting, mask wearing. So we hope to be doing a series of Zoom meetings with leaders to make sure that everyone understands what they need to be doing. Logs need to be kept, health assessments need to be done. So hopefully by the end of this month that they can resume 4-H club meetings. We were hoping to hire a summer intern, which we've done in the past. Obviously, we put that on hold at the beginning of this, but Rachel Hall, who has interned with us before, she was a student at SUNY Cobleskill and now Ithaca College getting her master's in ag education, came to Chris and wanted to know how she could assist with programming this summer, hoping that we were going to be doing some in-person programming. Clearly, we're not at this point, but Rachel and Chris sat down and came up with a list of topics that they could do online, Zoom meetings that could be taped and used as lessons. And the first one begins, I think, next week, and it's on ag ruminant and digestion of ruminants. And they have a whole series of topics that Rachel will be putting those videos together and for the rest of the summer that we'll have into the fall. Our parenting education program, the 6-week class has not happened, but our Parents Apart, which is for divorced and separating parents, it's a 6-hour class held over 2 nights. Most of our participants are referred by family court or lawyers. That was put on hold. Our parenting educator, Kathy Sweet, has worked with her counterpart in Warren County and condensed that 6-hour class down into a 2-hour video. And in that, they have areas where they're supposed to stop and reflect and ask themselves questions. And then Kathy follows up with either Zoom meetings individually with these parents or phone calls. So this is a way for them to still complete the course, get credit, that they can bring the certificate back to the court system. We have 2 or 3 parents who started that last week. They can take it at their, their leisure and complete it when in their own time frame. We hope that this will be something that we can use and will be successful as we move forward. We try to have 1 class a month, but it doesn't always line up with the time frame that some of these families need to get completed in the court system. So as we move forward and we open up programming and go back to in-person programming, this will be a way to offer programs to those who don't meet the in-person time frame or can't do it because of a work schedule or childcare issues. So there has been some benefit of not having in-person programming. It's forced us to think about programming and program delivery in another way. And I will begin working on the Ag District, which is Ag District 6, and we'll be working with Jay and Cassie to make sure that we can get a Ag and Farmland Protection Board scheduled to move that forward. But I haven't started the report on that. It's on my agenda to start. I think that's.
Anyone have any questions for Brian? Chris?
Yeah, just a point of information for Brian and for the supervisors. So from the New York Pause executive orders, there is a hotline that residents can report complaints to. Currently in the county, the complaints come to Roger, myself, the sheriff, and the DA. And anecdotally, we've been receiving complaints recently about farm stands and agricultural businesses not complying with the mask mandates, or people felt that they weren't taking the appropriate precaution under the New York On Pause and the New York Forward recommendations. So, Brian, I'm glad that you said you're working with all the producers to try to help them with their plans, and maybe just a little bit more education with them. And then anecdotally for supervisors, if you're seeing something like that and you know the proprietor, a gentle word would be helpful, or let Roger or I know, and we'll put it in the database.
Chris, do you know, is that farm stands and employees not wearing masks, or people going into those not wearing masks?
Both.
If you have complaints where it's actual the farm stand or the employees of that, you can let them know. They can contact us. We in addition to the sanitizers, we had masks that we were giving out. They were in short supply. We do have some more now. So if that is one thing. If you're getting a complaint and you have to visit them, you could let them know that they can contact us and we can get them some masks. And they're the reusable cloth masks. And if I know the next time that Ag and Markets puts out a call, if it seems like it's happening on a pretty regular basis, I can make sure I put an order for more than we normally would ask for.
Okay, that sounds good.
Any other questions? Does anybody else have any other business they want to bring before the committee? Jay?
Karina says she's on the line. You got to unmute her. She sent me a text.
Okay.
Says she's unmuted.
Thank you. Thank you. Just wanted to give you guys an update of what we've been working on, and we're not as close to the county buildings as CCE, so it's kind of hard to know what we're doing. We have had a couple of very large projects get wrapped up this spring. Twin Brooks Farm up in Hartford and Lambview Farm down in White Creek. Both their projects are done. Heritage Hill Farm in Fort Ann will be restarting their project. Ideal Dairy wrapped up their project late last winter. Hicks Orchard, we did a agrochemical mixing facility for them. That one's almost wrapped up. And we'll be starting a couple of new projects here, hopefully in the next couple of weeks as we get bids in. Obviously, the situation with dairy prices and also with construction outfits and stuff, everything with COVID has made doing project work a little difficult and slow. We have been kind of splitting our time in the office until the last couple of weeks. We are now basically back to 4 people in the office and 1 person working remotely and following the guidelines of the USDA Service Center requirements, which USDA is still kind of like in a phase 1 or phase 2. They're behind what the state requirements are. So our staff, currently we have 1 person working on a couple of forestry plans for landowners and providing landowner assistance with that. We have somebody working on nutrient management plans with a couple of farms. We're still doing trainings as they come up through our Employees Association and other venues through web series online and stuff. Cooperative Extension and Cornell has put out some soil health workshops and stuff. We received our hydro seeder. It's sitting in the yard, and we're going to be touching base with towns in the Champlain watershed because we got funding through a grant to use that in the Champlain watershed. We've got an order in, or we'll be ordering hydro seed or hydro mulch and seed for the hydro seeder. So we'll be getting that going. And the other really fun project that we're going to be getting started is a partnership with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Trout Unlimited, and a private landowner, the Coulter Brook in Battenville. We had an article written up about that in the Post-Star probably a year ago about, the fish passage and habitat improvement and getting fish through culverts and habitat connectivity. So we're going to be working on that project this summer, and that'll be a lot of fun and have partnership. And the district is contributing quite a bit of funds to it, and Fish and Wildlife and Trout Unlimited are contributing some funds and a lot of technical expertise, and DEC is also involved too. So that'll be a really fun item. The other thing that's kind of interesting, probably all of you are familiar with the Rexley Bridge area, and on the south end there's a small parcel of land that a private landowner just purchased. It tends to be where everybody accesses the river with kayaks. It has public fishing rights, and the landowner would like to do some site improvements there. She wants to put a camper there and stuff, and she approached us on a permit, and we're working with her and DEC to actually make that a little nicer site that's a little more attractive, more level, will help reduce some of the sediment going into the Battenkill there and eliminate some of the invasive species and just make it a little more user-friendly. We could put steps and a nicer approach to the river for a kayak launch in there. So you may see some changes, and if people call and wonder what's going on there, she has a permit through the district and has DEC's guidance, so it'll be interesting. I know it's a very highly trafficked site, so we're staying busy and we're going out on site visits as we can and practicing social distancing, and we have masks and we got sanitizer from the county, and just trying to do what we can as the work comes up and stay busy with our reimbursement programs from the state too. And we'll be working on our budget and doing what we can to kind of maintain where we are. Any questions?
Any questions for Karina? Seeing none, thank you, Karina, for your report. Apologize for missing your meeting last night, but I couldn't maintain service, it wouldn't dial in.
I completely understand. I come down to the office to make sure that I don't lose service.
Some days are tougher than others on the service part.
Yep.
Anything else to come? Laura?
Can you hear me?
Go ahead. Yes.
Just wondering about our Ag and Farmland Protection Board. Are we gonna, can we get a meeting together? I don't know, through this environment or something else in the near future? I've got some
Yes,
parcels that we want to do some stuff with.
Yes, I'm gonna coordinate with Brian and you, and we'll find a time that it can all work.
Perfect, thank you.
And a person who
Yep.
can coordinate the meeting.
Yeah.
Because it's not me. Anything else to come before the committee? Seeing nothing, motion to adjourn. So moved. Thank you. Andrew, did you have a question at the end? Oh, goodbye. You're gone.
Oh, goodbye. Goodbye.